Welcome to House Rule, a podcast about role-playing. This is our episode number 24.
Ew.
I'm one of your hosts, Ed.
I'm Ebo.
This is Jeff.
I'm Lee.
I'm pointing to their little tiny pictures on Skype as though they can see me pointing at them, and it was not the right order. You're correct.
Worked pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it was all right.
I knew what you intended.
You know, if you go left to right and we also go left to right, it'll be right every time.
That doesn't sound right.
That's probably true.
All right. We have a lot of big stuff to discuss.
Yes.
Big important stuff.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I know. I thought Ebo had a bunch of big important stuff to tell
What
us
do you have
about.
big important stuff? I'll let you go. I'll let you go with it. Go.
Yeah, Gen Con started today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's probably pretty fantastic for people who were there.
That goes until the 18th. If you, I'm not really sure if you're not already there. If you're planning on going there, that would be probably super duper.
If not, I'm sure there are like hashtags you can follow or pay attention to. Or maybe you can just steal pictures from various gaming blogs and stuff.
There are a bunch of really cool things there. I think some people from Onyx Path Publishing are going to be there signing some stuff.
Yeah, I know.
D&D's got a big area with a giant wolf statue, which is
That
awesome.
thing looks so awesome. I know
Sweet.
Paizo is debuting a Mythic Adventures book there today. Maybe not today, but certainly during Gen Con. For Pathfinder, and that looks pretty cool.
I usually keep tabs on what's coming out the pipe from Paizo, and I actually they released like playtest rules for the Mythic Adventure stuff, and it looks pretty dynamite. And I think they have brought out a new adventure path that features those new rules prominently.
Oh, sweet.
I haven't really heard very much about it yet, but it sounds pretty cool.
Dude, when that book gets released, and we on it, we should first read that thing.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
would like
everyone
to,
can hear about it from the horse, straight from the horse's mouth.
It's kind of
Ed
got
being the horse.
the feel of like epic level book, except it's for all levels of play. So it just adds a little bit of oomph to your characters, make them your adventures a little bit more
Make them
ballsy.
pop.
Yeah, I think that's basically the idea. Is it's a little bit more pop, a little more zazz, really. We're talking
Sure.
zazz.
So does it allow me to climb air like it did in the 3.5?
Probably not, but maybe.
3.0?
You never know.
That's what I'm hoping for. 130 jump check, or whatever it was, climb check. Let's see, what else? Oh, the gamers are going to do a live thing there.
The gamers of the gamers film fame.
Yep. I think it's Zombie Orpheus Entertainment.
I have never
I
heard
had
of it.
no idea that that was what they called themselves. That is awesome.
Yep. And I think it's also Dead Gentleman Productions, too. But they're doing one of their live things, which, if you haven't seen their one from Indianapolis Gen Con last year, you just do a YouTube search for
Gamers
the
Gen
Gamers
Con.
Live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious. Lee and I watched it. It was
pretty awesome.
A little over 40 minutes. They're doing one of those again this year. And they also, from today, August 15th, until August 31st, they have their Hands of Fate is free on their website.
It's their third movie.
Third movie, yep. The Darkness Rising was their second one. And this is the third one.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, those guys are pretty
Normally
awesome.
$10, I think.
Get it for free on my birthday if you download it on the 22nd.
Nice.
Don't use
Wow.
any codes or anything. I don't have any of those. Just do it on my birthday so I feel special.
I don't
Free
know if it's
birthday plug.
downloading it
Good for you.
or watching it on mine, but either way, you can see it for free.
Sweet.
Cool.
That's
All right.
I have.
Well, we do have some actual role-playing related material. Not that wasn't, but we're
No,
just
that was related.
sure. Yeah, related. We had the illustrious honor and opportunity over this past weekend to play a decently long session of material for the newest D&D Next playtest material that's been released.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Our colleague and sometimes co-contributor Rory ran a pretty decent session for us, and it's there's a lot of big revelations coming out of it. Some new details. The new material is really coming along.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very different from the original.
So
Very different than the last one.
D&D Next, this is this playtest. You guys weren't able to stream it because it's against the law right now, I guess, right?
Yep.
But we can talk about it. It's not technically coined 5th edition yet, but it is. We all know it. So yeah,
D&D best.
I guess I wasn't involved in this, and I guess I'd like to start out with a question. Like, did you guys make characters, or was it like pre-gen characters, or what was?
We
We
made characters.
The thing that I found kind of funny was Richard, who was also playing in that session, was remarking on the pre-gen characters that they sent out, and the way Rory made it sound is that there are a lot of rules cited on the pre-gen characters that no longer exist. So if you want to play it correctly, apparently you sort of have to make your own, which I was completely fine with because it is not very difficult.
No,
it was
making a character in
done
this
really
felt a lot like the only meaningful decisions you made were class and race, and then like what your character looked like. But other than that, there was not a lot of what do you call it? Customization that happens at first level by default.
Yeah. Well, they also give you starting packages for your
Yeah.
and your classes, which
It's the way the character generation works. It seems like most of the classes, of which I don't know exactly how many there are. I could tell you if you put them in a lineup which ones are in and which are out, but it seems like most of them have like a big choice, like a path of some kind, sort of like what was used a lot in 4th edition, both at character creation and at different tiers, that you kind of pick, and it keeps ramping up in that sort of customized kit, if you want to borrow a term from an older edition. We obviously didn't. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. Most of those kick in, I think, at 3rd level.
yeah,
some of
on
them-
3rd level.
Some of them, I think, maybe 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the cleric one did the
I
divination
sure didn't.
or domain.
Play anything that
Starting
had
on
that. But yeah, it seems like most of them have something that kicks in at like 2 or 3, and then you will periodically throughout the levels get something related to that path, which is a little bit more customized.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I read a blog that one of them had written up, one of the creators or whoever was working on it. I don't remember who it was.
Developers.
Yeah, but
Sure.
I don't remember. But they were talking about how they intended that stuff in. They put that stuff in there for complexity changes, and because they wanted you to get used to your background and your class before you actually went into your or they wanted you to your background and your race before you actually went into your class, so that you can your background has stuff that you can do and that you have
Mhm.
get advantages for and stuff like that, and your race has dark vision and all that stuff too, and they just wanted to make sure that you were able to figure out all that stuff and then go on to the actual class starting around 3rd level, and then they give you like a branching different paths where like the fighter has gladiator,
Knight, and Warrior. I was the fighter
And
in the
warrior.
party, so I know all 3 of them.
And one of the things they said about that was one of them was just like a sword and board, and then the other gladiator, I believe, had like 3 different maneuvers you get
Hmm.
at each different level, and then like the sword and board, I think it was the warrior,
Yeah.
gave you just different like bonus on your crit or something else like that.
Yeah,
Whereas
it's
the gladiator, each round you got to do one of 3 different maneuvers. So that's where they intend to go into the future, I guess. with
one of the
their
other
tactical
choices.
packages.
One of the other choices you do get to make at character creation is a background, and I sort of feel like this is something that they might flesh out. Maybe they might not, but they might flesh out to be a little bit more crunchy. It's at this point, it's basically just you get like you get I don't think they even determined which lore you can take. Lore is more or less all they have going on for skills right now, which is basically
Yep.
your path in life has given you certain knowledges, so you get a bonus on certain checks related to various knowledges. But then they each have like a trait, something else that they have going on, and some of them have additional proficiencies, which extend beyond just weapons and armors now to different types of equipment. Like, for instance, I took a soldier background, and they have proficiency in dice and cards,
Yeah.
so they're better gamblers because that is, I guess, presumed to be most of what soldiers do is cheat each other out of their money while they wait to fight bad
Also,
guys.
how you describe lore checks kind of sounds a lot like non-weapon proficiencies. If I
Yeah, I mean, if we're being completely candid, I never understood how non-weapon proficiencies worked back in the second edition days. I feel like they're really bringing back a lot of second edition nostalgia that I didn't even know I had in me.
sure.
It's mostly just that it plays a little bit more like third edition, but even kind of simpler.
Yeah, it
And
feels to me like they wanted to make the game like third edition, but at the same time be like, oh, these are the differences.
oh well, I don't know about that. I feel like they really have. I've been consistently surprised, and bear in mind I haven't looked at any playtest materials that have come out since the very first batch. I just kind of lost my intensity for looking into it just because the first bit was so bare bones that I was just kind of like, yeah, no, I'm bored. But this stuff's got a lot of variety and a lot of apparently so far tested stuff. But it feels like they're really, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of third edition in there. I feel like there's a lot of second edition in there, and I even think that they have a good amount of fourth edition in there already. Like stuff from fourth edition that I liked that I didn't really realize. Like hit dice are a mechanic that they have added, which are not the same thing as they had been in previous editions. But what it basically means is you have a certain number of dice in a pool, which sort of function the way healing surges did in fourth edition, where it's basically each time you take a short rest, you can spend them to roll them to heal up some of your lost hit points.
Oh, that's cool. I liked short rests.
They're pretty interesting.
And you do like gain back all of your hit points when you take a long rest, but you only gain back half of your spent hit dice. So it basically gives you a certain strategic advantage to conserve how many of them you spend on a daily basis, as
Okay.
opposed to just getting healing spells or just bedding down for that long rest.
So there's like a little bit of that managing your resources day to day, but without the micromanagey. I'm gonna roll this
Right.
d8 3 times. Is everyone full?
Well, it's got a little bit. I would say it's got a little bit of that super robust healing that never seems to run dry like
Sure.
fourth edition had, except that it also isn't foolproof, and it also doesn't really hit dice, at least as far as I've observed. And bear in mind, I read almost nothing about any spells. Hit dice have very little to do with combat; they're just for resting.
Yeah,
Most
Yeah.
healing abilities just give you hit points out of nowhere now.
Well, even in 3.5, I mean, maybe it was just us, but like after level 6 or 7, maybe we just assumed that the cleric could heal everyone up to full after every fight because it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, because depending on who the cleric was, they either didn't want to, or they would if you made them. I will show you that I have enough hit points in my bag of tricks to put everyone up to full, even if I had to start using cure minors. But yeah, I really like that kind of blend of all editions that I'm familiar with, at least.
Now, the last playtest that I played was months ago, and Backgrounds, which I'm glad you described because I was wondering what they were going to be, because when I would play it, Backgrounds was like this feat progression that you had, and that you could ignore and
Oh boy, did they take
interchange
that
them.
out.
But then you guys were mentioning earlier, off the mics, that it was the feats are completely different and crazy. What's
Mhm.
going on with feats?
Feats are, you get feats with your ability score improvement, which each class gets, but at random intervals. I think they all start at 4.
I don't think it's exactly random.
It's not random, but the pattern is not forthcoming.
That is
The
true.
pattern
By
is-
looking at
there's
it.
no pattern between the different
There's no
classes.
apparent pattern. I will acknowledge
Okay.
there distinctly is no apparent pattern. Like everybody starts getting ability score improvements at level 4, and then some people get them. Everybody gets them just kind of wherever after that, a sprinkling of them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Clerics get one at 4 and 6, and I think barbarians don't get one until 8 after 4,
Do you
and then
choose,
like
or is it
13.
to a
You
specific?
get okay. So
It's-
how it works is you get
It's
one
2 points
2 points
in one
yeah.
in one score, or 1 point in 2 scores, or
Or-
you pick a feat if feats are allowed in your game.
Wow.
And yes, and that's the only way you can get feats from what I
So 2 strength or a feat?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I
Feats
guess.
do look pretty potent
Hmm.
Yeah.
to counterbalance the fact that you would be giving up on 2 strength.
Now, is that one of those like simplicity things? Like a person who doesn't want to worry about all the mechanics can just take a bunch of strength and be happy, whereas someone
Even-
else
Yep.
could like grab a bunch of feats?
Even more so if a GM doesn't want to worry about a bunch of feats, they can just say that there are no feats in this game, and taking them out changes almost nothing else.
Okay.
It
Pretty
specifically says in the feats document that it is an optional rule, and I think that Rory was saying that they've been leaning pretty heavy on like the idea of modular gameplay, and like the fact that skills are completely absent probably does not mean that skills are always going to be completely absent, but more likely that there's going to be like a module that you can stick in to make skills more granular,
Sure.
or just leave them normal.
I mean, I'm not going to give up any ability scores for skills. Let's just admit that right away.
You
but-
know, yeah, I mean, like I say, they're pretty good. They're like they give you a lot of stuff each one, and some
Sure.
things that just don't really do, like some of them just give you abilities that don't otherwise exist, or game options. I'm not saying that it's the wisest move. I'm just saying that like it seems like ability scores, at least by default, are not. They're trying to. The feeling I got was that they're trying to make each ability score into like a feature of your character. Like they felt more so in earlier editions
Right.
where you didn't have quite as many things on your sheet. In like 3rd edition and going forward, you basically just balance it so that you have your ability scores optimized for what you intend to do.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it's more like you have a lot more points to start with. Generally speaking, I felt like I did.
So, did you guys
Yeah.
get to take feats at level 1, or is that not
No.
something you got to play with?
No.
I don't think that starts until level 4.
Because it's
Okay.
there is no, at least by default, there is no way to get feats until you start getting ability score increases.
Sure.
Instead, you get like, oh, your background also gives you a trait. I had forgotten about that.
Uh-huh.
Your background gives you the lores. It's basically your background gives you a suggested lore kit,
Okay.
a suggested, what is that? Like a kit of gear, and then also a trait.
And proficiencies.
What's the trait?
It's like I was playing a druid,
Yeah.
and I had like a priest background, and it gave me like, sort of story style access to
I mean-
like healing and stuff at my temple.
Okay.
A lot of them are very story based. For instance, like as a soldier, I had a military rank, which basically just is a way of saying that if you are in the area where your army holds sway, then lower ranking military officers will usually do what you say.
Oh, that's awesome.
I read there's a background for being a noble, and it gives you retainers. I find to be the clunkiest thing in the world for adventurers, but you basically have 3 people who will do your bidding, but are not non-combatant people who will help you out with things.
Yep.
Just a wide variety of things, it seems like.
As a guide, I had a general layout of the land and the stuff around it, and I could also effectively feed up to 5 people a day, I think.
I've really warmed up to that kind of mechanic, I think, recently, where it's like things just kind of are the way they are, and it doesn't necessarily give you like a plus 10 bonus to this check in this specific circumstance. You just get it.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think that's the difference between like class and background traits and feats, is that feats are the thing where you have to make a sacrifice, but you do get that number thing that
Sure.
pops up, like a +5 to what have you, or bonus healing or bonus damage. I agree. It's one of those things where they make it difficult to pick. It's one of those things where I imagine playing a character who has one feat and being reluctant to pick more,
Sure.
just because you don't want to fall too far behind on ability scores. And and also attack rolls and certain other checks, like attack bonus is scaled back. I think that's been true since the first playtest stuff.
Yep.
Whereas the most combat intensive characters, i.e. fighters, get up to a maximum start at +2 attack bonus and wind up at +6.
Now that's not net. That's like a base attack type of bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Barbarians,
Right.
I think, are +1 to
1 to 4.
+5.
They go to 4. Yeah. Barbarians actually have lower ones because they rage, and they get advantage on all of their attacks when they're raging. But like clerics go up to 3 or 4. But there's also counts for like spellcasting stuff. I think druids go up to the same, and it sort of scales. The other thing that scales your attacks, and this is I think new to this one, but it could have been for the other ones also, is that you get multiple attacks. Everybody in the playtest, everybody except mage. They don't call them wizards anymore; they're mages.
Yes.
Which sticks in my craw like nobody's business, to borrow a phrase
You
from Ed.
can stuff it in your craw.
Anyway,
the last
so they
one actually was still separated. I believe.
Anyway, everyone except mages gets an additional attack, at least one. Fighters get 2. And it's just when you take an attack action, you swing 1 extra time.
Oh, cool.
Or if you're a fighter, 2 extra times, and that's it. Their mechanism for dual wielding was, I thought, clever. Because, I mean, clever enough. I mean,
Yeah.
when I looked at the advantage for having a shield, I was like, oh, having a shield is awesome, but having a second weapon is also pretty awesome. Like, you just swing a second time, and you don't add any of your damage bonuses onto it. You just get the die.
Oh, that's like 4th ed.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And that is one of those things that is really spruced up if you take a feat for it.
Okay.
Second attack or additional attacks were in, and I thought that was interesting. I completely did not expect to see that in the class charts. I thought they were excising that entirely, but nope.
But the whole shift 5-foot stuff thing, that's all out. You can still move and attack 3 times, right?
Yeah, it seems
Yep.
like it. In fact, it gives you the most advantageous version where you can expend any amount of your movement, I believe, during any part of your attack sequence.
Cool.
I think. I would have to double check that, but I believe that's how it goes.
And in keeping with their things are simple mechanics, I avoided looking at grappling entirely because it's always a mess. But there's no things that D&D veterans will notice is that in the rules there's no bonus for flanking at all. In fact, a lot of the sort of simple stuff like that is just gone. Charging, it's not in there because you can move and attack.
I think charging is a feat.
Yeah, it's a feat.
So thematically, you can charge at the foe and attack them because you can move and
Right.
attack, but the thing they call charging gives you a bonus when you do it, basically. Okay.
Yeah, and you have to have a feat to get the bonus. But like I said, there's no advantage for flanking at all that I could see. Which threw me off because that's one that is in my brain forever.
Yeah.
So if you have 2 people attacking the same thing from opposite sides, it's going to be awesome. These gangbusters. That wasn't in there. There was another thing that was simplified. That was notably simplified. Attacks of opportunity or opportunity attacks, depending on which version. You only provoke them if you move out of someone's threatened area, not if you move into it.
I had heard
So you
that,
can approach any number of dragons as long as you're not moving out of their threatened areas. They're not going to start swinging at you. You can
That's
dance in front of a dragon, and it don't care as long as you don't move out of its
that's kind of like a kick
range.
in the pants. It's easier to get into flanking position now, but it don't matter.
Yeah, and I would imagine that that sort of stuff, that little crunchy bits that they add in, are either going to be feats or are going to be in the the modular stuff
Sure.
that'll show up later. And this is just sort of
Yeah.
the stripped down, like the playtest is the stripped down stuff. At least this one is.
So it sounds like there's gonna probably be some modular stuff that like different
Right.
people can buy into different levels of, but then there's also gonna be that stuff where like the game is this set
I
of
believe
things.
they've
Yeah.
specifically mentioned like tactical module being one of the ones they would like to try to do,
Yeah.
Sure.
where it adds a little bit greater texture to your combat movements and different attack strategies and stuff,
Cool.
which I'm fine with. I don't think that I don't just out of the box. I don't feel like it really needs too much more, but at the same time, it's one of those things like I was trying to learn it kind of as fast as I could and then on the fly, and I'm rather glad that it was simple for that reason. But in general terms, for most games, I would probably devour a lot. I would have devoured a lot more rules if they were there
Sure.
Yeah.
because
Well,
I
yeah,
have a problem.
we had a person who's not role played a lot, in our friend Britt, and she participated and seemed to pick up on it pretty easily,
Hmm.
um, which was good. I mean, I was glad to have someone who was newer there, who, um, she brought us through the rules. She picks up on stuff pretty quick, but we only had to remind her of things like, a few times, and then she pretty much had it going on.
That's cool.
The advantage disadvantage thing is very easy to understand, I
It's-
think.
It's easy to understand, but I'm still not super sure that it's the most elegant mechanic in existence.
No,
They treat it like it's the best thing for all situations, and I just sort of feel like it sort of feels like a kind of a mechanic that popped up every now and again in fourth edition, and maybe before that. But now it's like every situation that gives you an advantage or a disadvantage is governed by this one same rule.
Hmm.
And I feel like just when you're for the listeners who don't know exactly what we're talking about, the mechanic for advantage and disadvantage is if you have an advantage or a disadvantage on a given d20 roll, you roll 2d20, and you take, in the case of advantage, whichever is the higher, and in the case of disadvantage, whichever is lower. And yeah,
That's really
I just don't like-
powerful, right? Like it feels
I think-
powerful when
yeah.
playing.
It's extremely powerful, and
I so seldom got it. I really did not do well in combat during that session. I think it was just because of my bravado. I charged enemies that I probably should have been. Well, one time I just got dropped on by spiders. That was not my fault.
Yeah.
Deadly
That
venomous
was-
spiders really did me in hard. But yeah, it feels powerful, and then at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I just sort of felt like it feels powerful when you have advantage. Having disadvantage, it feels like you
Miserable.
are crippled. It is
Yeah.
terrible.
Speaking of crits, I thought that crits were really lackluster, and that you all you do is you re-roll one of your damage dice on your roll. So
Yeah.
if you have 2d6, you roll 3d6. If you have 1d10, you roll 2d10.
It's a
That
little
bothered me.
disappointing.
That you add more on a crit for a long sword, which does 1d8, than you do for a great sword, which does 2d6.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really. I understand. I mean, I'm just saying. I understand not multiplying the strength bonus to damage. I just don't see why doubling the damage dice is so controversial.
Yeah, it
For
seemed
the-
like it's I don't know. It seemed they felt lackluster when they happened, because all you're doing is adding an additional die, and at the same time, I mean, I'm used to bigger crits, so I guess there's that. But I mean, when I rolled a 20, like I was like, oh yeah, I rolled a 20, and then I do like one extra damage. And that's, but
mean,
yeah, the crits being better for like the longsword, like he said, just seemed kind of stupid.
Yeah, I think it seemed a little less than generous. I don't see the reason for them
Yeah,
to.
it's a 1 out of 20. I don't know.
I mean, it's.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I like that they took out, they didn't renew, I should say, critical confirmation rolls, because
Yep.
those were always such a bummer. But at the same time, yeah, well, it was the same thing when fourth edition rolled out, and their criticals were just kind of, they were excellent, they were great, but the but they were a little underwhelming just because you weren't like,
Yeah, you didn't roll anything when you critted.
things weren't exploding. I don't know.
You like you wrote when you critted in fourth edition, all you did was max out your dice, and then
yeah.
you roll a crit and you're like, oh yeah, awesome. And instead of grabbing a fistful of dice, which is awesome, you looked at your character sheet and you did math, and then you were like, I did 18 damage instead of a D10, a D8 plus 10. Yay me! I would rather roll that fistful of dice, you know. I'd rather roll and get like a big number. On the other hand, combat did feel lethal at low levels.
Yeah.
Um,
Considering I was
because-
unconscious for most of.
yeah, he had the
Yeah.
most hit points in the party,
Mhm.
and
I do.
he was basically.
Yeah, I mean, we had a barbarian, so I guess I don't think I was the most.
That's true. The barbarian is, as far as I can tell, just the most beefy person in any given party when he's raging. You just take half damage from piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning
yeah.
weapons of
Wow.
all sorts.
That's
Barbarian.
awesome.
Just half damage.
Yes.
Yeah, so Ebo was tanky as all hell. But the fighter, like, since the ACs don't go up really high and the hit points were low, and the enemy attacks are still going to be probably in the same range as level 1 characters, that's saying, like, probably, was it 3 to 5 bonus to hit, and probably 1 to 3 damage. Almost any given character could be dropped in 2 hits. And the people with the highest AC still went down in 2 hits. 3 hits if they were really lucky. Up the damage.
I know they had a problem with like how easily people dropped in 3.5, which is why 4th edition had the huge bank of hit points. But like what you're describing sounds a lot more deadly than even in 3.5 when you're fighting kobolds, you know?
Yeah, there's not a lot you could do to mitigate it. Like you couldn't have a really good AC and rely on low-level enemies having bad attack rolls, because the low-level enemies. Rory implied that Rory made up all of his own stuff, and he implied that he balanced the stuff basically using stats from monsters that were already there and just changing the names and flavor.
Right.
And like there were some of them that were rolling like 3 and 4 to hit,
Wow.
and doing like a D6 plus 2 and 3 damage, and like those are pretty big numbers. Like my character had 9 hit points and 16 AC.
It seems like the way the attack rolls, in particular, attack rolls and ACs scale, is intended to make basically to keep low-level monsters around longer. Or, I mean, I think the way it felt to me while playing it was that even like that gang of goblins, which a 3rd edition character would have found to be a funny joke, will in this new edition will remain dangerous if they're insufficient numbers and like tactically sound, because their attack rolls will never be that much less than the best armor class you can get, and your attack rolls will never be that much better than their armor class, that it's like that it's just like a pushover to hit them.
So like gaining levels doesn't make you as godlike in this game as in 3.5.
Well, like if you're,
or
I mean,
4th.
I think that might be where the ability score bonuses kind of take over the show, just because looking at it, mathematically, the fighter starts with an attack bonus of +2 and ends with an attack bonus of +6.
Sure.
So he's only ever going to be that much better at hitting goblins just on the strength of the class.
Okay.
Granted, with more robust ability score bonuses, you might be really rocking a high attack bonus, but you might also want to spend a couple of those points elsewhere throughout the time of 20 levels. So
Yeah.
it's entirely possible that you're going to be you'll have a reasonable chance of missing a goblin at like level 15.
Do you remember if AC scales up?
You can get magic stuff, but it
It's-
looks like the
I
stuff
mean-
you start the game with is.
Okay, but it's not built into like the
It's-
class.
Right. It
Right.
seems
No.
like they're trying to make that magic stuff and its apparent rarity seem a little bit more of the edge that you're getting.
Sure.
That's basically like if you want to yeah, I mean if you want to make a goblin look like a fool, you'll want to have a big magic sword and a robust magic shield, and then you'll have an easier time at it. Whereas otherwise you're just killing as many goblins as you possibly can, but sometimes you'll miss them.
Well, it sounds kind of cool. Like one thing I always liked about like other systems that weren't level based, like if you take like a White Wolf, you could have like a powerful NPC or a character, but they could get ganged up on by a bunch of lower level people, and you know, over time or whatever, actually take them out. Whereas in D&D, like if you're 5 levels up, it is so hard to do anything to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean in third edition D&D that was a problem. In fourth edition D&D that was the basis of the system.
Yep. With the minions and all that jazz.
That
Well, like every other level, everything went up by 1.
Yeah.
basically the system was scaled so that anything that was 4 levels less than you was absurdly easy, although
Yeah.
sometimes still time consuming to kill. Anything that was 4 levels higher than you was supposed to be like the utmost thing you could approach and try to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, as much as the scalability of it is cool, the level 1 characters are going to be sacrificed at the altar of mid and late game balance. I think.
I really thought that my character was going to be literally sacrificed at the altar there. Like the death mechanics, just for the sake of establishing this for the listener, are basically you can, I believe you can have any amount of negative hit points up to your total positive hit points before that amount of damage just kills you.
Oh.
And then while you're in the negative, any amount of healing will restore you to 0 first, and then up from there. So you don't have to worry about that buffer of negatives.
See that 4th edition zombie mechanics.
But you get basically 3 Constitution saves. Well, you make Constitution saves every turn. They're just a DC 10, so you're rolling your Constitution bonus, adding it to the roll of a D20, and as long as it's over 10, you win. If you get less than 10, you lose. And it's just, you're trying to get 3 wins before you get 3 loses.
Okay.
And if you get 3 loses, then you're dead. And I had 2 loses and 1 win, and then somebody shoved a potion down my craw, and I lived. But it was not looking great.
Death mechanics have
true.
always been really awkward in all versions of D&D, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, for low level characters, the death thing is I guess it's good to kill people while they're not attached to their characters. I don't know. But murder is a distinct possibility. There's another thing I wanted to mention that was Ed brought it up. The ability check. By default, instead of making any skill rolls, the GM simply calls for an ability check from everybody. And
Roll a D20 and try to get under.
try to get under.
It's
Try to get above whatever number he decides. For him, it was 15. Is
more
like
or less
moderate.
more or less the same as it was in 3rd edition. It's plus your ability modifier, and then against a set DC.
Mm-hmm.
They got rid of their skill bonus dice or whatever they were called. Skill
Really?
dice. Yeah.
I think Ranger and Rogue get something like that.
There are
expertise
expertise
dice
dice.
still exist.
Yeah.
Did anyone play the rogue?
No.
I was thinking
No.
about it, and in retrospect, we had a lot of we had a barbarian, a paladin, and a fighter, so I probably could have afforded to.
Sure.
But I was really itching to just get in that fighter action right away.
Mhm,
Yeah.
I like players. But yeah, there was no like Britt and my characters. I was playing a half elf and she was playing an elf, and we got like advantage on spot and listen based wisdom rolls.
Ranger too. We had a paladin, a barbarian, a fighter, and a ranger.
Yep.
How
And,
fighter heavy can we make this through?
The
It was awesome.
I was playing a druid, so I was actually the odd man out in that one.
Oh, Ed, how'd you get the brunt of all this?
What?
The but anyway, the point is that yeah, there were no skills or anything like that, and any of the checks that the GM asked you to make, unless you had advantage or something else from one of your backgrounds or a skill, or not a skill, a class feature, you were, or I guess racial feature, then you were just as good at it as your attribute modifier said, and never better.
Sure.
And saving throws are just another form of ability check now. So instead of having fortitude, reflex, and will, you just have a strength save, a dex save, a constitution save, an intelligence save, wisdom save, charisma save.
Yep.
That actually sounds really cool.
I like it a lot. I like it more than I did when I first heard about it. I'm just like, yeah, I guess it does make sense just to kind of cut the crap.
Yeah.
You know, you do have to, like, there are situations where you want to avoid something happening in each of those situations, in situation relevant to each of those abilities. We didn't really get a lot of chances to use those, though. We weren't, like, subject to a lot of spells or abilities, and the game was pretty straightforward. We didn't have a lot of, like, social intrigues, which is one of those places where I assume you'd make a lot of ability checks and maybe some ability saves. But yes, I want to see more of how that is going to pan out.
Yeah, there are some cool things though, because since they're just ability checks and you don't have anything too specific, Rory allowed me to like kick a boulder into place when Ed and I were like moving boulders, and then like these goblins were coming out of the ground.
They were some sort of cursed gnomes, I think.
Cursed gnomes, yeah.
I think of them as goblins just because they had goblinish traits and they were evil.
And I was, for one of my turns, I was allowed to make a strength check that plugged up the hole to prevent the gnomes from coming out. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
They kept that sort of thing from the very first playtests.
Yeah.
Which I like. I like the idea of being able to use your surroundings to make things happen and not be barred from doing so by the rules.
That's cool.
Yeah. So basically, everybody has 6 skills and of varying proficiencies, and then you have specialties that you get from your stuff.
To speak to the randomness, it sounds like in that, are the DCs at least lower? Like the base DC in 3.5 was always like 15. That would be really,
15 is moderate in this.
I was gonna say, that would be really
Base.
brutal with this.
15 is moderate, and I think Rory used that for almost everything. And I have a feeling that that's just sort of the 15 was the one that we rolled against the most, and we did not have great chances at doing it.
Right.
25 is actually
Most of the time.
possible.
I don't think I made a single wisdom check the entire time.
I had advantage
it was
on
just a
them.
0, but it was just so sad.
I had advantage
never
on
saw-
wisdom checks and a +3, and I still missed a lot of them. Partly because I was rolling primarily 7s, but at the same time, we almost never rolled against 10. I'm pretty sure, whether it was intended or not, we were rolling against 15 most of the time. And 15 is not a super easy check to make when your highest stat is +3.
I rolled something like a 3 or a 4, I think, to spot 2 medium-sized spiders descending on me, and they just eviscerated
In a
me.
not very big room either.
Nope. It was just nasty.
Yeah, that was a thing. But yeah, I thought that was at least worth mentioning. I mean, I assume the granularity will come in later, but like when I play D&D, I expect that, that sort of the extra crunchy stuff, and that it wasn't there. I was like, it took me a little while to sort of get my brain around 6 skills.
It sounds more along the crunch line of like 2nd edition to me.
That's what the impression I kind of got too. And like I said earlier in jest, but it actually is true. Most of the rules of 2nd edition I didn't really understand at the time. because while we were still playing second edition, I was more or less just following along. Like, I didn't really need to know
Yeah.
how everything broke down.
That is
I
true.
I owned a monster manual, but I have never understood what the stat blocks meant. I mainly just got it for the, like, descriptions
Awesome
and stuff.
pictures.
Yeah.
For the invisible
Yeah.
stalker picture.
Descriptions.
Well, just that's what,
Mercury
and it's just
Dragon.
like going back, and I've tried to like pick up an old book before. I don't personally have mine anymore, but I've seen one since, and I've just looked at it. I was just like, no, no, it wasn't just me. It is really that obtuse a read. I thought, just
Yeah.
I feel like if they can just bring that bring some of that feel up to a relatively modern style of reading and writing, I would be very, very much obliged to them for trying so.
Yeah.
My biggest concern, just on the surface, and like since we've been talking about like the different stats, I was looking at a couple of the monster descriptions, just to kind of see what sort of numbers you're playing with. But I was just looking at it, and one of my biggest pros of third edition was that it was all kind of rigged over this internal consistency, which I refer to as a skeleton, where the numbers all make sense in respect to one another. Like different creatures with different hit dice will have predictable stats at various hit die levels and that sort of thing. And I'm not sensing a lot of that in here. I'm sensing a little bit more of the less of that and less of fourth edition's. They took the skeleton off of the wire rack, and they just left you with the wire hanger,
Right.
kind of, where it was just a line going straight up, and a little bit more of second edition's
Arbitrary.
strange chicanery, where it's just
Yeah.
sort of like,
My problem with that is that it's always like that stuff is always the hardest on the GM.
Right.
When it's
yeah.
harder to make monsters along a clear line, like to me it's always like that is always way harder on the GM when you can't be like, oh well, this creature has this, so they, in order, like in your brain, after you see enough of them, you can be like, oh, to be remotely balanced, I'll have this and this and this, and and then you can build off of from that. And for me, like I use that extensively when I run games.
well, I remember in that second edition monster manual, you'd get things like reading the description of a certain type of monster, and they'd say, this monster lives in the community, which includes this many typical monsters, and then this many third level fighters, third level clerics, and a fifth level fighter as a leader. And in second edition, they gave you no indication whatsoever how to conjure stats for those monsters.
That's true.
Yep.
I think that might be something from like I never looked at a Dungeon Master's Guide for second edition. Maybe it's in there somewhere. Maybe they give you a hint. But all I know is that in third edition, it was like they talked about it fairly extensively, but there wasn't a lot there to get. Once you got it, it was there for you to do. It was very easy it was very simple in my opinion, if not easy. It took a lot of time, which is, I think, one of people's main complaints about third edition was that
Right.
GM prep takes forever. And I think that they're leaning a little bit toward the simpler with this edition, but at the same time, the only thing that's going to suffer is variety, unless they reveal some sort of secret technique for adding that variety or
Oh,
something.
if they do some sort of variety kung fu, that would be pretty cool. I appreciate watching game developers do kung fu moves. But yeah, I think that's pretty much spot on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, like I'm saying, I'm not upset about it at this point. I'm just also not 100% sold on it either.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll keep going well. I mean, we've already talked about maybe playing a little bit more of this same playtest game, because Rory apparently prepared a lot more than we were able to get through, mainly because he attacked us with a bunch of cursed gnomes and we nearly died. But
That took a long time.
That did take a long time.
We spent a long time just kind of role playing before we even got into any of the
Oh
grid,
yeah.
and I was fine with it because I was just like, yeah, this is why we're here. I really want to start swinging my sword, but this is really what we're doing.
That's cool.
That's true, and my character was the most fun to roleplay.
Yeah, I did.
So I was winning in that one.
I did get that feeling, which I was very pleased with. That it sort of took me back. Like I wanted to meet the people in the caravan, and learn about what we were doing, and just interact with people for a while before I started getting killed.
That is true. You don't always need to start off getting killed from the get-go. Take a little bit of time to know the people you're getting killed with.
Yeah, well, I really feel sad now that so many of them died. Well, I mean, it wasn't a lot of people.
It was
but
inevitable.
all those horses are dead.
That's true, and I really like those horses, dude.
We lost all of our horses.
I think killing horses is when you can see that your players aren't doing so well, you just start killing the horses.
Also, Rory really likes to kill people's animal friends.
Oh, God.
Yes. We did
so
talk about
horses
that.
were top of the food,
Yeah.
or bottom of the food chain as far as that's concerned.
I bet that was the first thing. All these horses are dead. We all know this. Let's move on.
Well,
Yeah.
Inevitable.
the donkey died too, right? Or, yeah,
I think the donkey died first.
3 horses and a donkey. I pulled the donkey's cart after that while
Yep.
we were fleeing.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
If you're the new donkey, you're a
Yes,
dead
I
man.
am the runner-up for being a donkey. Uh-oh. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I knew I was dead already.
Well, it's okay.
Oh my
We only kind of like you.
Oh, man.
So yeah, I mean, you guys are. This seems to be some concerns here and there, but overall positive response to D&D Next playtest.
Yeah, I'm really
Sound
looking
right?
forward to trying it again. I'm
That's fun.
especially looking forward to whatever they come out with next. I probably should write them feedback if I think of any specific.
Write them one of your patented, strongly worded letters.
I don't really make my words that strong. They're kind of like lukewarm letters, is what I call them.
Okay, fair enough.
Like, hey, if it's not too much trouble, could you maybe read this letter? Guys, are you there?
Good call. Send them a lukewarm letter.
Yep.
I'm sure they'll respond positively.
They'll just be like, shh, be quiet, pretend you're asleep. Just sit still, he won't know. Okay.
So yeah, that was a pretty good time. I would do it again.
Absolutely. I'm,
Awesome.
like
But I
I said,
mean-
I'm not quite sold, but they have piqued my interest in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That's the first step.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
All right. I think that is probably all for talking about D&D Next, and probably all for us this time.
Yeah. Feel
Yeah.
free to send us an email at houserulepodcast.com.
You do
We
that.
will respond to you.
House
We're also on the
Podcast.
Twitters at House Rule and Facebook at House Rules. So,
at houserulpodcast@gmail.com, Jeff.
yes. What did I say?
You said houserulpodcast.com.
Oh,
It's not even a thing, man.
houserulepodcast@gmail.com,
Yes.
and we'll Gmail you back.
I got your back, listeners.
All right. So thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yep. See ya.
Take care.
Bye.